365. Our buddy Chris Franklin should be streaming in here any second. And when he does, we will certainly punch him up. John, I've referenced a couple of calls I got last night doing my show on WIP. Got on early because of what transpired in Monday Night Football, the suspension of the game. Continued good thoughts and prayers to DeMar Hamlin of the Bills, who had to be taken from the field immediately to a hospital. He is in critical but stable condition because his vitals have been stabilized. So that was good news. I did get this question. I'm going to run it by you. And when Chris Franklin joins us, I'm going to run it by him as well, from an Eagle fan who said that the Eagles can get extra motivation for this Sunday's game against the New York Giants because of Kayvon Thibodeau's reaction to laying out one Nick Foles. That the hero of the Super Bowl of the Philadelphia Eagles of 2017
can't quit Nick Foles, man. They can't quit Nick Foles.
They did. I couldn't believe I got this. That Eagle fans needed added inducement to root hard for the Eagles on Sunday. Forget the fact that they needed to get first place in the NFC, that they can win a division. No, Kayvon Thibodeau did snow angels while Nick Foles convulsed next to him on the field. And that's the reason why Eagle fans should be pumped up and ready for this game on Sunday. Does it get you pumped up, Chris Franklin?
Yeah, nah. I'm sorry. That's a
boy, man. That Polsian society runs deep, Chris. It's small, but it runs deep.
That's a. I don't even know how to put that in a word. That's a new one. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nick did a lot.
When I got the call, thank you, Chris, for confirming my suspicions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thibodeau doing snow angels. Probably not the best thing for him. I'm sure he wasn't paying attention, but he's down on the field.
Let me take a shot, and I did this again Sunday and last night, and I'll do it again here. The fact that he hit Foles and Foles goes down, and like I said, he looked like he was convulsing on the field. And here's Thibodeau doing snow angels. I'll buy his explanation afterwards. They didn't even know that Foles was hurt on the play. And sorry, the moment he got a little excited, he overreacted and the like. Did you see what he did on the sidelines afterwards?
I did not.
You didn't?
No,
did you catch it, Chris?
No, I missed
They caught it on camera. After he comes off the field, after doing snow angels, after realizing Foles was down on the play, went over to the sidelines and went like this. That he put Nick Foles to sleep. Now, there's no explaining that one after the fact. You want to try and explain it away that, hey, I didn't see him. He was approximately 3 feet away from you, and somehow you didn't see him. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. You can't go, I'm putting him to sleep on the sidelines afterwards. So I actually understood the point the caller was trying to make. This was a bad reaction from Kayvon Thibodeau, and he should be chastised for it, but that's what the Eagle fans really need to get them pumped up for the game on Sunday. Not the fact that Giants, not the fact that it's for the division, not the fact that it's for the number one seed, not the fact that they've lost 2 games in a row. We hate Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, I wasn't going there.
So I wonder how Coy Detmer feels after nobody avenged him after he broke his arm. I wonder how some of these other guys went there too.
January 3rd. What is today? January 3rd, 2023. Happy New Year, by the way, Chris.
Hey, Happy New Year.
And there's certain people still worried about Nick Foles in Philadelphia. They got bigger fish to fry, as they say. But before we get to that, were you watching the game last night? Obviously, just a horrible situation. We went through something I thought was bad on Sunday with Josh Sweat, and then all of a sudden you see something this serious. It was quite a shock to some people. How do you think the whole thing was handled?
I was coming in from I was driving back from the office. I actually was coming home, and I walked in and I was like, hey, what's going on? I said, why is everybody standing around? The first thing I saw was Josh Allen with a tear rolling down. So I was like, well, what happened in the middle of it? And then started hearing like, what? You see so many times, like we saw Sunday when people put the neck injuries, you see them with cards. We all remember Dennis Byrd and everything else. When you see something like that, it hits you in a way different manner, and it gets you. And Listen, I don't know. We're in a he said situation now with the whole 5 minute
Yeah.
thing. I'm restarting everything. I don't care. I don't know who said what, but if it came out that they really said, okay, yeah, let's get back together and start playing 5 minutes from now, that's completely unacceptable. And you had a guy's life hanging in the balance. And don't get me wrong, we all love football. Everybody on here loves football. People who are watching here loves football. But when there's something to be said that a guy's life whose heart stopped of all things, and the only thing you worry about, well, let's get everybody back together and it'll be fun. It is callous, and you can't do that, something like that. So I'll get this. The ESPN, I thought did a great job trying to do what they could. Uh, those players were in an impossible situation. You just hope that he continues to do better and to improve, because it's heavy. It's really heavy. You hope he gets better.
My thoughts and prayers for Hamlin and his family and the Bills' entire football community, and hopefully we get some good news before the day is out. No good news on Eagle front with the 2 straight losses, or is there? Jalen's going to be back. Johnny Mac told me earlier in the show he's definitely going to be back. I don't know if he said definitely, but he said he believes he's going to be back. Should we all believe he's going to be back on Saturday? You want to throw a percentage out there on a Tuesday morning before a Sunday game that Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback when the Eagles, well, they're going to win the coin toss and they're going to defer. So you got to wait till the Giants get the ball first. But then when he gets a chance, will Jalen Hurts be out there as the Eagles starting quarterback?
I think there's an 80% chance he's playing. I think it's that much because I know he didn't take snaps. I know he's right, but this game is way too important for everything else they need to go there. Because the last thing his team wants to go is to be still as banged up as they are, having to travel down to Tampa again to play in a wild card round. This team. I think I'm not for throwing him out there if he's not 100%, but at this point right now, I think the season's on the line. I really truly think any aspirations of them having a Super Bowl hinges on this game, probably against backups, but it hinges on this game because home field and that bye week, this team really needs it in the worst way. So I think this is one of those situations where I'm not for it unless he's not, even for some, I'm not completely behind it, but it's one of those things where it's probably going to have to, you're going to have him because that offense last week it was bad. There's no other way to put it. It was just bad.
Yeah, and the quarterback was bad, no question about it. Gardner Minshew did not play well. I broke one of my own rules, Chris. Because typically, it's a cliche, but it's true. Typically, the quarterback gets too much credit when the team wins, too much blame when the team loses. Not this case. I mean, Gardner was just that bad. And I think everything offensively stemmed from the poor performance from the quarterback, more than I know there's a lot of criticism of the coaching staff. When your quarterback's playing like that, I mean, there's not much you can do. But you bring up a point with the Giants. In a weird way, does that complicate matters? Because if the Giants had to win the game, there's at least a human nature aspect of, well, they're not going to play. They're key players. They don't have anything to play for. They can't move. They have a real chance to upset Minnesota in the first round. They don't want to risk Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones. Does that give you a false sense of security is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think so. I think if this was a very young team I think if this was a very young team overall, I think I would worry about that. But I think you got a lot of these guys like Fletcher and Kelsey and all those other guys that have been through this and they know this. And so I don't think it's going to be a false sense of security. I'm just hoping it's not one of those things where they become very passive in their play call and their play calling where they think, okay, you know what, let's just run on defense. Let's just run. Well, we see it so many times. Everything so much like straight base cover 2, base cover 3, just get out of there without being hurt and just hope the offense scores just enough against these backups and then we'll just walk off the field. I just hope it's not one of those things where it's called differently because of everything that's going on there. That's the thing I'm worried about. You're going to have to. I think this is a game where you roll Jalen out of the pocket a little bit more, especially to his left. I know everybody talks about he's done a lot better to his left, but after seeing the way that Cam Jordan did that one power move where he just basically took a hand right into the middle of Jack Driscoll, pushed him back into the pocket, I think you're sweet. You keep rolling him out, and that's how you keep him safe. But Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be that much of confidence. I'm
All
worried about the
right.
scheme.
You went to Jack Driscoll, and that's where I wanted to go next. And we had you on last week, so I'm sure we asked you. I can't remember exactly what you said. How the Eagles would fill the void of Lane Johnson being out of the lineup. I think most everyone projected it would be Driscoll, and it was. He wasn't good. He had a bad game. I'll ask Johnny Mac to look up the PFF grades, but I can pretty much guess that his is going to be pretty putrid for this past week. He had help on that offensive line of those not playing well, penalties and the like. He was not the only one who dropped the ball on the Eagle O-line on Sunday, but he might have been the most glaring. Do they revisit? Should I be asking you the same question? Is there a chance that they change their mind and this week they move Mailata over to right tackle and insert Andre Dillard at left tackle?
I think they still keep it the same way because they really, really don't like doing. But I think if it was a playoff game, I think they'd visit that one. But I think this week they'll try to give him Driscoll a little bit more. I think it's one of those things you hate to use more two tight end sets, but I think you might see Jack Stoll over here a little bit more. I thought they would do more of the good chipping. I think when that touchdown pass they threw to AJ Brown, I forget who the running back was, but what they did was really good. Like he got a good chip block on him and neutralized him before he went out on his route. And I thought that was you'd see more of that, but you didn't. So if it had to be a playoff game, I think as much as I'm also not a fan of not switching too much around now because you think you miss continuity and you got too much stuff going on when it happens. But I think they roll with Driscoll at least for one more week until Lane, possibility of Lane coming back for the
in a
playoffs.
weird way, I think it's a good sign, Chris, because if Lane was going to be out, I don't think there's any doubt Jordan Mailata would be the right tackle and Andre Dillard would be the left tackle. So that to me is sort of a good sign, the fact that they're trying to get through it without those moving parts because they know Lane Johnson's going to be back for the playoffs, or at least is going to try. I think the question isn't whether Lane is going to play, it's whether he's going to finish because we know how tough Lane is. But to Jody's point, Jack Driscoll didn't get a good grade, but there were 3 players worse than Jack Driscoll on offense. One is obvious, Gardner Minshew, who was the worst graded player. Quez Watkins, which is typical, and Jack Stoll, although Jack didn't play that much. So, yeah, it wasn't a great day from the offensive perspective. Now, people, because we are in Philadelphia and Jonathan Gannon, there's still some criticism of the defense. The opening drive was terrible. I mean, it took forever. It's 100 plays and half of the first half, seemingly. Taysom Hill just converting short yardage. But after that, it's kind of lights out from a defensive perspective. Another 6+ sack game. Can you imagine? Now, granted, it's 17 games, but if the Eagles get 4 sacks, they will have the most sacks in NFL history. Who saw that coming?
Did not, especially after last year. No, they didn't see that as well too. Then as I look at that first drive, it was really bad. And the problem where they were having, you would think they would have adjusted. I would have played Linval Joseph even more, or Jordan Davis even more. A combination of that was they were getting about like 5-6 yards of first down or second down, and then by the time it was like third down, it was like 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It's like, okay, now you really going into Taysom Hill territory, and that's where he had success because you don't know what he's going to do. It's so hard to predict what the play is going to be. So I thought after a while, I thought they adjusted very well, especially after halftime. I thought they did very well. Josiah Scott kept them in that game, I think, because if
Josiah
the
played well,
touchdown,
he played well.
He did, and if the Saints scored a touchdown but right before the half, I think this is a whole. I think it's a route from that point on because it's as we saw with the offense. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not putting this loss on again. I mean, even Jordan Mailata after the game said everyone knows that this loss was on the offense. He said that as well too, and that's other words I won't say on there as well too. But yeah, he said it pretty much
a lot of F-bombs. Yeah. He also said the officials have never seen an effing pancake in their life from Landon Dickerson's block. Should have been a 28-yard touchdown for Kenny Gainwell.
And he was saying too, like he thought it was on him too, because he said he had hold of the outside of the guy's
Yeah,
pads, and he
he
let go at the
might have
last
been
moment. Yeah,
called for holding more
yeah,
than, but he kind of, because I assume that's what happened. I assume they called Jordan and got the number wrong,
yeah.
but he insisted no, they called it on Landon. He said they
Which
could
is
have called it on me, but they called it on Landon.
just crazy because they always give you the inside pad part,
Yeah,
right? The inside pad part there. If you're outside, yeah, okay, yeah, you get that. But when you get the inside, nah, that's just
yeah,
controlling somebody. But-
yeah. Too
All
much
right,
domination. 10-yard penalty.
CF, we know that it was just a month ago that the Eagles went up the turnpike and basically decimated the Giants, crushed them. Their offense put up a 48 spot that day. They just sliced and diced the Giant defense. Giant offense didn't do much. Daniel Jones was accountable for 2 of the touchdowns, but not a great performance by him, and he got lifted in the game. I have to do a couple mea culpas when it comes to Daniel Jones, because I said before the season started, he's a bottom 10 quarterback. Never going to be a franchise quarterback. The Giants have to make a decision about him, and they should go in another direction. He's had a pretty good year. He's a top half of the league quarterback. I'm still not sure he's in the top 10, but he's a top half of the quarterback type year. If the Giants decide to play him, any issues that the Eagles will have with him? Like you mentioned, Taysom Hill playing quarterback did some pretty good running against them. Kyler Murray, a quarterback they played earlier, almost beat him out there in Arizona. Should the Eagles, we always say, oh, the Eagles should be good at holding down a running quarterback because they got to face Jalen in practice all the time. He practices walkthroughs. Come on. They don't really practice taking down a running quarterback. Does Daniel Jones and his ability to run the football scare you at all this weekend in this game?
I think it's a concern in the fact that I think one of the Eagles' best strengths is, as we were talking about earlier with the sacks. I think that could be the one thing that works against them with Daniel Jones, because sometimes what we've seen at times when these edge rushers in the contain, they go in for the sack or they do the spin move. Next thing you know, they lose contain, and next thing you know, the quarterback's on the outside running for 5, 10, 15 yards and a first down. That's the thing I'm going to be looking at. I want to see them continue to contain. I don't think you need to spy them. I don't think you need to use a resource like Kaiser White or TJ Edwards or safety, what have you. I don't think you're at that point yet, because I think you're going to need, even with those receivers still, I don't think you need that. But if he does play, I think it's just a matter of making sure that you keep those edge rushers and go, hey guys, we just need you to keep your outside shoulder free. Don't let them out. Don't let them buy them time that way, and just let those interior defensive tackles just do their magic too. And that's the way I'd probably worry about that. Other than that, I'm not too worried when it comes to him.
Yeah, for a couple reasons. One, I don't think the Giants are going to play him that much. They might start him, but I think he's going to be out pretty quickly. But yeah, anytime. I think discipline on the pass rush comes into it a little bit more. But the Eagles, in Chicago with Justin Fields, they gave up a couple plays. That's even more of a problem. And with Daniel Jones last time, they did a pretty good job with that kind of stuff. So, that front has been great all year. I'm starting to think that, Hassan Reddick should be in the defensive player of the year conversation. Now, Nick Bosa is going to win it. We all know that, but he should be top 5, Hassan Reddick. He's been so effective. The secondary, though, we were talking about this a little earlier, Chris. They've sort of come back down. I'm not even going to say come back down to earth, but there's been a little bit of an adjustment. Is that because they were just so good early that it's natural? Because those opposing passer ratings against Slay and Bradbury, they were ridiculous first half of the season. And now you see a little bit more of them getting beat. Is that just sort of a market correction?
I think it's one of those things where I think teams are just willing to try it a little more and test the markets a little bit there, because there's times when you weren't even thinking about Slay just basically took away half the field, and Bradbury was the main target. That's the person they're looking at. I also starting to think you're starting to see the effects of CJ Gardner Johnson being out, really starting to really take his form now, because you had to worry about, if he was playing that middle field, if you're going to try those deep shots, you had to worry about putting the ball in the right position, because you can undercut it too. So I think I think that, if anything, I think that's the biggest thing, where you don't have him back there lurking. And teams are now, since you don't have that, I mean, Reed Blankenship's doing an okay job. I think once you have that, you're missing. Once you miss C.J. Gardner Johnson, you're missing a lot. They're taking shots, and you're starting to see that because these corners can do good for 3-4 seconds, but if you got a guy, or if you have a guy like like for the Saints, the way he went by Bradbury too. That's not his strength. Bradbury's strength is baiting the people.
By the way, I got to give a shout out to Mike Quick. Before the game, he said that kid was going to get the Eagles. He was going to get a big one, and he was right. He was 100% right. I didn't even know who he was. Weber State, undrafted rookie, but he's fast.
I was worried about him on a kickoff or punt coverage because I've seen a couple of things. I remember he had a 42-yard one. I forget who, but he had a 42-yard return. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy worries me a little bit. But other than that, yeah, he's going to be a problem. He reminds me of Dante Stallworth in a way for them. He could be like a Dante Stallworth type guy with the speed. I'm not saying he's going to put the production that way, but he could be that type of guy for the Saints, though.
Chris, everyone is going to be narrow focused on Carson Wentz's shoulder this week, and you guys will do your best to drip information out of the Philadelphia Eagles. Good luck with that. But there are other injuries that we need to know about. You mentioned one, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Didn't even open up his practice window last week, which we thought was going to happen. Do you think that happens this week? How important is it for him to get back into a game? We talk all the time about quarterbacks shaking rust off. Every football player who hasn't played for a month, I think, has to shake off a little bit of rust. Any speculation on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, whether he's going to be able to get some time in at the regular season before the playoffs get underway?
I tried reaching out to a couple people, and it's been nothing with that so far. I mean, I saw him doing some conditioning on the side last week, but it was nothing major, just like vertebrae, like just basically like he's getting the cardio up. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's getting the stamina after sitting around for so long, just getting stamina, his game shape stamina back. So I don't think he's going to suit up. I don't think they're open his window this week personally. I think it might be something where you see him if they win and they get that bye week, then they do it. So that way they really get him acclimated and try to get him back as much as they can. But I thought last week, if they were going to activate it before regular season, I thought last week would have been the week. So that way you got him the one, then they would rest him again and then go on again. But yeah, the team needs him back in a big way.
I think if we're going to see CJ, it's the playoffs. I don't think the window's getting started this week. I'm with you, and they're certainly not going to play him this week. So if he returns, and that's open-ended, because Nick, he's not honest with injuries. He said, but that one's a little bit different, than a typical ankle sprain, knee sprain, whatever, shoulder sprain like Jalen has. All right, this is grade 2 to 3 weeks, sort of the history of that type of injury with a lacerated kidney. And there could be a dislocated rib in there as well. So really difficult. I think people look back to Zach Ertz and Zach playing so quickly. They're also different. Not everyone's the same. So that's an injury that is really, truly open-ended because you just don't see it that often. And ultimately it has to heal. Because we've seen CJ a couple times. He's happy, he's go-lucky, he's, his normal ebullient self, but you can feel great and it might not be healthy to where you can go play football and have collisions like unfortunately you saw last night. So there's a lot of uncertainty with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Lane Johnson, I talked about a little bit before. I think you're with me. We know he's going to try to play. So do you think the Eagles are doing a disservice by not doing a little bit more manipulation? Because, and I know people are not fans of Andre Dillard in this town, but Andre Dillard is better than Jack Driscoll. Maybe not better at right tackle, but the old adage is you got to get your best people on the field. I don't think the best people are on the field. I think if you move Mailata to right tackle, you move Andre Dillard to left tackle, your best 5 are on the field without Lane Johnson. But is it worth it? Is it worth it just as a safety net because Lane might not be able to finish a game?
if they weren't playing the Giants this week, I think he'd probably explore it because I'm not the biggest, especially when you have to switch over Mailata to play a whole different thing. He's been doing it all season. He's been kicking his left leg back. He's been setting up that way too. And they tell him, "Oh yeah, go over this week and try to and remember all the rules, but do it for the opposite side." It's a lot harder than it sounds like when we say it when we say it. So I'm not really keen on that. But I think if it wasn't playing Giants, if this was a playoff game right now, we would see and they try to do the best they can to hold up that way and make their adjustments. But this
But
week,
you know
I
what?
see
You know what, Chris? The beauty about Mailata is he doesn't know it's difficult. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't know you're supposed to be uncomfortable. He's like, all right, mate, I'll do it. He doesn't know because he never played. And he did it before. And he went to the right side. And he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I think it took a while too. Like he did. I think he did well. Diller did well when he filled in. I just think like Mailata was building up to as well too. Like his mentality is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, it's okay. I'll beat my feet all and all. It's like he'll do that stuff. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? It's almost like saying like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put you guys inside playing a quarterback right now. And you're like, I can do that. It's cool. It's no problem. Ah, crap. Who's an A gap on somebody else this stuff too? Like you get in there, like the attitude's there, but when it comes to the execution part of it, that's where like it may take a little while for it to happen on there. But so he'll always, all those guys, no matter who's on that offensive line, who's on that team, they'll be willing to play somewhere. It's a matter of if they can do it quickly and well at high level and quickly. I think he could do it at a high level. The quickness about how he would do it, it may take a quarter, it may take a half, but we've seen all it takes is a half with this team like against the Saints, and they're behind.
Chris, I think we can all agree there is some pressure on Eagles this week. There was a very good chance that there would be no pressure on Eagles this week 2 weeks ago before they played Dallas, before they played New Orleans. So we know they need to win to lock up home field throughout the playoffs and to win a division. So there's some pressure. We can debate how much pressure, but you have to acknowledge that there is some. Is there any way that you can look at this as a good thing? That had they beaten Dallas and then you got 2 weeks of inactivity and a bye week and guys coming back from it and you don't know what they're going to hit the field with for that first playoff game, that at least with the pressure of needing a win this week, it keeps people focused and it keeps them playing at a specific level? Or am I just trying to come up with an Eagle spin ankle that makes it somewhat less obnoxious that they've lost their last 2 games?
I think if you said that after the Dallas game, yeah, okay, I could see that spin being like, okay, they lost that one, they'll keep focused, and then they don't have to be all for the next 2 games. This week, this past loss, because how many times have we seen teams for the last 20 years, what have you? Like it's one of those things where you got times where you got the 2 weeks off, and there's still a lot of number one. I know recent history with the number one seeds hasn't been great getting to the Super Bowl,
year,
but
0 for 2.
Yeah, it has been rough. But I think at least having 2 weeks in before your next game, I think is a big thing, and they don't find themselves in that position anymore. I think especially when you look at the way they lost last week, I think roster had top to bottom. That's a much better roster than the Saints. And you just let them, just basically, especially early on, like they just were out physical and just bullied them in a way. When you look at the way that on both sides of the ball until they finally got the stuff corrected and they went from there on out. So yeah, I can't even see that spin. But after last week's win, that spin, I can't see that as well too. This team should be rested. We all should be like resting up, going like, hey, you know what? Here's our preseason. We're in preseason mode this week. We got the bye week, and then
we should have been 1 o'clock, Chris. Now we're 4:25. Not the worst case scenario, but
I'll still take it. As long as not 8:30. As long as not 8:30 or 8:15. Cool.
The offensive coaching staff, they're taking some hits because of the performance. Too often this season, and let's be honest, they're still 13-3. They're 13-1 with their starting quarterback, so it doesn't happen a lot. But there are sort of lulls where the time of possession gets out of whack. Because they don't convert third downs, they use tempo a little bit too much. And all of a sudden you have these weird skews. You had it in the first half again. I think Miles ran it twice and everybody's losing their mind. How could you possibly run Miles Sanders? Well, he had 15 stinking plays. I mean, he's not going to run it 17 times because you have 15 plays. So you can't give it to him too much. Plus, Miles is dealing with a knee and he's got a brace on. Maybe that played into it. The offensive game plan. How much blame do you put there? I guess versus how much blame do you just say, hey, Gardner didn't have it?
You know, it's funny you brought up the run game because yesterday I was thinking one or two questions to ask, and I was thinking either what happened with Gardner, looking at that one in a game, or the other one is why is the run game not having gotten over 100 yards the last 2 weeks? And I think to me, as I look at that play call, even if it's not this team when it was really successful, the run game was humming and it set up their passing game exponentially. Like you look at that now, you don't. They haven't run the game well. I know Miles is dealing with his knee. Is roster manager wise, I know it's tough. That might have been a game where you bring up Trey Sermon because I think you look at the weakness of the Saints. You should have been running that ball. You look at the Cowboys. You should have been running the ball. I'm not saying that this. Not saying go back to the 3 yards of cloud at dust times we used to see or last year's version of the Eagles, but I think it's one of those things where, especially with a backup quarterback in there, you control the clock. You get set up all your play action passes. You give him, and I think the play action gives a little bit more separation. And we know he doesn't. Gardner's own is not as strong as Jalen, so he needs more timing. He needs the timing to get in the rhythm. I thought that would have been a lot better to set him up for that. So I look at the way that Nick and Shane, Kevin, and Patullo, and everybody else set that game plan up. I thought they could have done better with that. I really do. And even with Miles banged up, you still had Kenny Gainwell proved when he had that right side not holding whoever that was called on, whatever, but. They should have gone back to him. I would have seen more game. I would have seen more Boston Scott. I think Scott's a really good north-south runner when it comes to that, especially when you attack a defense like the Saints. That would have been the play. So I look at the way that I look at the lack of using the run game more, not running it more, maybe additional 5-6 carries earlier in the game if you have 15, but still give you defensive rest or run some clock and just try to balance it back out a little bit. I thought that would have been a better way to do it.
Chris, I could take the easy route out and say, how do you think the Eagles are going to do Sunday against the Giants? I'm not going there. Instead, I'll go to the other NFC East matchup because if the Eagles lose, they can still back into the number one overall seed, or they at least could back into the division if the Cowboys were to lose. However, the Cowboys are playing the Commanders. And Coach Ron Rivera, who, my opinion, royally screwed up last week by putting Carson Wentz in as their starting quarterback. Shouldn't have happened. I said it long before. Carson threw his 3 interceptions and put up his worst passer rating ever. All those ugly games here in Philadelphia.
He might have been the one quarterback worse than Gardner Minshew last week. He might have been the one.
He might have been it, yes. And after the game, Rivera wouldn't admit his mistake and go, yeah, I can't start this guy again next week. He is not committed to either Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke or Ed Kratz's favorite, Sam Howell, coming off the bench. Is there any chance that the Commanders can be competitive against the Cowboys on Sunday?
Yeah, if they make it an ugly game, would you make their defensive line start to really get after Dak and force them? That's the only way. They're going to need defensive focus. Hope Brian Robinson takes over that game because that's the only way to do it. If I'm them, Heineke gives them the best shot, and I still, for life of me, I don't know why they felt like they needed to force feed Carson Wentz back into that offense. I don't get that one at all.
By the way, the worst part of that, Chris, that whole thing, Ron Rivera didn't know he could be eliminated last week. That is astonishing to me. Did not know. Didn't seem to know. Yeah. And he was eliminated.
I don't think he wanted to know.
I'll give him a pass on that as compared to he made a decision to start Carson Wentz. Why? Why would you go there, coach? That's what cost you your job, not the fact that you didn't know that you could be eliminated. We can work through that. The choice of Carson Wentz to start is the reason that he should be.
I need attention to detail. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Bad decision, but I if you're the head coach, you got to know, hey, we got to win this game. And his explanation was, I was worried about taking care of our business. I never thought we were going to lose, so I didn't buy. But can you imagine Nick Sirianni not knowing the implications of this week? I can't imagine that. That's a bad look for any NFL
Famously,
coach.
an Eagle coach once did go down that road. Rich Kotite had no idea that
Yeah.
the Eagles were still alive
Well,
after a
Rich
loss.
Kotite.
He goes, "We're still in the playoffs." Had
Yeah,
no
Rich
idea.
doesn't have the best reputation. That's one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
We used our ace package. We thought our guys were doing well, and we had to do that. No, it's got 7-2 go 7-9. He was just. I remember. Now, granted, I was young, but even then, I was like, "It stinks." It's one of those things. Like, it's bad, man. Yeah, but no, I think it's one of those things where somebody went to him and was like, "Hey, we have this playoff." And he just put, "No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know." And that deniability, trying to do that, and he set himself up for that.
Yeah,
I think
maybe.
he's confident.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, but those Eagle teams never left anything in the locker room. I can tell you that for sure.
Reggie
All right,
did
Chris
well,
Franklin,
Bavaro.
quickly. Eagles going to win or Eagles going to lose against the Giants on Sunday?
I've been picking them to win the last 2 weeks, and next thing you know, we see what happened. But if this team loses the backups, they don't deserve to go anywhere in the playoffs. So they should win this game. They should win this game.
Good enough, brother. We expect to have you on. We know we're going to have you on next week because the Eagles are going to be in the playoffs. Whether it'll be a bye week or a home week or a road week, that we don't know. We'll find out Sunday. We know we'll be talking to you next week. Thanks, brother.
Thanks. I'm going to talk to Kotite the rest of the day now. I might ask a question.
Yeah,
Kotite.
that was a nice impression. Pull that out.
Thank you. I'll talk to you guys. I'll talk to y'all later next week. I'll see y'all later. Yeah.
That's 20 years of memory there. We are impressed, Chris Franklin. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Chris
Y'all have a good
Franklin
one.
from NJ.com here with us on Birds 365. Quickie timeout. We put a bow on the show. Stay right there.